When the train first stopped, the silence was the loudest sound Anna Keller had ever heard. For 3 days, the rumble of steel wheels had been the only rhythm she knew, metal shrieking on metal, soldiers shouting, the muffled sobs of women pressed together in the dark. Now, as the doors slid open, sunlight spilled inside, sharp and blinding. The women blinked like startled birds, shielding their faces from the sudden brightness. They had arrived, somewhere in America. Anna did not know the exact place, only that it was far from Bremen, farther still from the ruins of what used to be Germany. The guards had said nothing on the journey except, sit down and quiet. But she knew they were no longer in Europe. She had seen the ocean through the cracks in the ship's hold, endless blue water and gulls wheeling above the deck. America had been a rumor once, a place her father had spoken of before the war, when he read American novels in translation and told her about big cities with lights that never went out. Now it was the land of the enemy. As she stepped down from the train, she half expected shouting, insults, maybe the butt of a rifle. Instead, a young American soldier pointed toward a line and said, in careful German, "Bit here, please, stand here." His voice was even. Not kind, not cruel. Just tired. The women gathered, about 200 of them, former auxiliaries of the Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht, some still wearing what was left of their uniforms. Their insignia had been torn off, their belts confiscated, their hair bound up in makeshift scarves. They were between 17 and 30, most of them younger than Anna's 24 years. A woman beside her whispered, "Do you think they'll shoot us?" Anna did not answer. She had asked herself the same question 100 times. They had been told, before surrendering in Bavaria, that the Americans hated Germans, that they would starve, humiliate, and use them as slaves. Propaganda had painted a picture of vengeance and cruelty. Anna had imagined cold camps surrounded by barbed wire, guards with whips, and endless hunger. That was what the Reich's radio had promised if Germany lost. Yet as they marched toward the waiting trucks, she noticed something strange. The guards did not strike anyone. The camp beyond the road was surrounded by fences, yes, but beyond them stood tidy wooden buildings, and the smell of bread drifted from somewhere unseen. Bread. Real bread, not the gray sawdust loaves of the last months in Germany. Her stomach clenched with the memory. The camp was called Fort McPherson, though none of them knew that yet. It was one of many scattered across the United States, places meant to hold the hundreds of thousands of Axis prisoners who had been shipped across the Atlantic. Most were men, captured in North Africa or France. But this transport was different. These were women, clerks, typists, radio operators, whose pens had served the war as surely as rifles. Inside the gates, they were registered. Each woman's name was written carefully in a ledger by an American sergeant who smelled faintly of tobacco and shaving soap. Then they were led to a barracks, long wooden huts lined with bunks and windows that actually opened. Anna sat on the lower bunk and ran her hand across the blanket. It was coarse, but clean. There was even a small pillow. She felt herself shaking. Not from fear, but from confusion. In Germany, she had believed in the stories told by the party, that the Allies were monsters, that they would destroy everything German. Yet here she was, sitting on a clean bed, her name written in careful letters by a man who had said, "Welcome to camp, Miss Keller." No one had ever called her Miss since the war began. That night, they were allowed to shower. Real showers, not the freezing trickles of field stations but rooms with steam and soap that smelled of something faintly floral. Some of the women wept openly as the dirt of months slid down the drains. Others stood silent, afraid that any sound might make it stop. Anna watched the water bead on her hands, pale and thin now, the nails cracked. She remembered the leaflets that had warned them of American torture camps. And she laughed, softly, bitterly, but also with a kind of relief that hurt her chest. If this was captivity, it was not what she had imagined. Later, in the barracks, the guards brought them supper, beans, bread, coffee. Real coffee. The taste was sharp and strong, and when Anna swallowed it, she felt warmth spread through her chest like something close to forgiveness. Across from her sat another woman, Hilda, who had been a typist in Hamburg. She looked up from her bowl and said, "Do you think this is a trick?" Anna hesitated. "If it is," she said, "it's a very kind one." The others laughed quietly. It was the first laughter any of them had heard in months. Outside, the American flag moved gently in the wind. A guard leaned against a post, humming a tune that Anna did not know. The sound drifted through the night, soft and steady, like something from another world. In her cot, Anna took a small scrap of paper from her pocket, the last page of her old notebook, the one she had hidden during capture. She wrote carefully in pencil. May 24, 1945. Arrived in America. We are alive. The enemy has soap and bread. I don't know what to believe anymore. She folded it and placed it beneath her pillow, where she hoped it would not be found. The war was over, but something else, something quieter and stranger, was just beginning. The days at Fort McPherson fell into rhythm before the women quite realized it. At dawn, a bugle sounded somewhere beyond the fence. The air was cool, the kind of dry warmth that felt strange after German winters. The barracks stirred with quiet motion, boots on wood floors, whispers, the rustle of blankets. They lined up outside for roll call. An American lieutenant read the names from a clipboard, his accent flattening every German syllable. The women answered softly, "Here." Then they were dismissed for breakfast, oatmeal, fruit, and coffee again. Anna ate slowly, still unsure whether such food could be real. The other women sat in clusters, murmuring about home, about rumors of release, about what might have happened to their families. After breakfast, they were assigned tasks. Some cleaned barracks, others helped in the laundry, kitchen, or infirmary. It was labor, but not punishment. The Americans paid them a small wage in camp coupons, enough to buy soap, thread, or even sweets at the canteen. Anna volunteered for the infirmary. Before the war, she had worked in an office, typing manifests for the Luftwaffe. Her hands were quick, her handwriting neat, and the American doctor, Captain Harris, noticed. "You speak English?" he asked one morning as she sorted bandages. "A little," she said, careful with her words. "Good. You can help with records." She nodded, unsure whether this was permission or command. The infirmary smelled of disinfectant and cotton. Most patients were other prisoners, men from nearby camps who had been wounded before capture. Anna learned their faces, their accents. They were like the brothers or cousins she'd known in Germany, young, exhausted, haunted. She had expected to hate them for fighting, for losing, for dragging her world into ruin. Instead, she found herself listening to their stories. One soldier told her about the Ruhr, another about Stettin. Many did not know whether their cities still existed. At night, Anna wrote again in her notebook. "They treat our wounded as if they were their own. I don't understand it. Perhaps I never will." The Americans had rules, no fraternization, no contact beyond necessity. But the boundaries blurred in small ways. A guard might smile, offer an extra piece of bread, or teach a few English words. The women learned quickly, "Thank you, good morning, coffee." There was talk among them that the Americans were only pretending to be kind for propaganda. But as weeks passed, the suspicion faded, replaced by something more complicated, gratitude mixed with guilt. "Do you ever think," Hilda asked one night, "that maybe we were wrong? About everything?" Anna stared at the ceiling. "I think," she said slowly, "that we were told too many lies." Hilda turned over. "And we believed them." Anna didn't answer. She remembered the speeches, the parades, the posters that had once filled her with pride. Now they seemed like relics from another lifetime. In July, a Red Cross representative visited the camp. The women lined up to sign forms confirming their health and treatment. The representative, a Swiss woman with neat hair and a crisp uniform, spoke fluent German. "You may write letters home," she said. "They will be censored, but they will go through." The barracks buzzed at night with the sound of pens scratching paper. Anna wrote to her mother in Bremen, though she did not know whether her mother still lived there. "Dearest Mutti, I am safe in an American camp. We are treated humanely. We have enough food and even hot water. Please believe that I am alive and not suffering. I think of you every day." She hesitated before the next line, then added, "The Americans are not what we were told." She signed it and folded the paper carefully. Weeks turned into months. Summer deepened, the fields beyond the fences turning gold. The women began to look healthier, their faces filling out, hair growing back its color. The guards noticed, too. One afternoon, as Anna walked back from the infirmary, she overheard two soldiers talking. "Hard to believe they were our enemies," one said. "Yeah," the other replied. "They look like any girls from back home." Anna pretended not to hear, but the words stayed with her. Any girls from back home. She wondered what the American soldiers' homes looked like: porches, trees, mothers waiting with dinner. In the evenings, they were allowed into the recreation yard. Some women played cards or read English primers provided by the YMCA. Others sat quietly, watching the sky change color. Anna often sat near the fence, notebook in her lap. Beyond the wire, she could see a stretch of road and a distant farmhouse. Once, she saw children riding bicycles there, their laughter drifting faintly through the air. For a long time she could not understand how laughter could exist so easily here, when in Germany it had been replaced by sirens and ash. In August, something unusual happened. Captain Harris asked if any of the German women knew how to sew. Hilda raised her hand. "We all can sew," she said. "Good," Harris replied. "The local town needs help making uniforms for hospital staff. It's voluntary work. Anyone interested?" The offer was met with suspicion. Leaving camp, even under guard, felt dangerous. But curiosity outweighed fear. A week later, Anna found herself sitting in the back of a truck with 10 others, the gates opening before them for the first time. The town, small, neat, with whitewashed houses, seemed like a photograph from another world. The locals stared as the truck passed. Some frowned, others simply looked curious. At the sewing hall, women greeted them cautiously. The work was simple: hemming sleeves, stitching patches, but the atmosphere was uneasy. No one spoke much at first. Then one afternoon, an American woman dropped a spool of thread, and Anna bent to pick it up. Their hands brushed. The woman smiled awkwardly. "Thank you," she said. Anna nodded. Bit. For a moment, that was all. But something had changed. By the end of the week, they were exchanging small words, bits of language. Needle. Button. Good. It was halting, fragile communication, yet it carried weight. When they returned to the camp, the others crowded around, asking what it was like outside. "Quiet," Anna said. "And clean." "Did they hate you?" someone asked. "No," Anna said after a pause. "They just didn't know what to think of us." That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake listening to the crickets and thinking of the woman at the sewing hall, of how ordinary her smile had been. She wrote in her notebook. "It is strange how quickly we become human again when someone looks at us without hate." By early autumn, the camp began to feel less like a prison and more like a strange, enclosed village. The wire fences still stood, the guard towers still watched, but the rhythm of life inside had softened. The women woke, worked, ate, and slept with the precision of habit. Routine had replaced fear. A few of the first letters from Germany arrived that month. Each envelope was stamped, opened, and resealed by censors before reaching the recipients. Anna's came one morning during mail call. The sergeant read out her name, Keller, Anna, and she hurried forward, her hands trembling as she took the thin paper. Her mother was alive. My dearest Anna. Our home in Bremen was damaged, but we are safe. Food is scarce, but your brother Karl found work clearing rubble. Every day we hear that prisoners may return soon. I pray for that day. Take care of yourself, my child. Anna read the letter 3 times. Her mother's handwriting wavered, but it was hers, the same loops and slanted strokes that had filled grocery lists and birthday notes. Tears blurred the words. For the first time since capture, she let herself believe there might be a future beyond fences. She wrote back that same evening, sitting at her bunk with the paper balanced on her knee. Moody, your letter reached me like sunlight. I cannot explain this place, it is a camp, yes, but not cruel. We work, we eat, we sleep. There are doctors and order. Sometimes I even forget we are prisoners. Do not worry about me. She hesitated before adding one more line. I am beginning to learn English words. Maybe that will help me when I come home again. She signed it and handed it to the guard collecting mail. He gave a short nod, tucked it into his canvas bag, and moved on. As September turned to October, the air grew cooler, and with it came small changes. The women were issued jackets and heavier blankets. The canteen began selling tins of cocoa, and the guards allowed a small camp library to open. Most of the books were in English, but there were a few German volumes donated by nearby townspeople, Goethe, Heine, a battered copy of F.E. Briest. Anna visited often. She liked the silence of the room, the way the dust hung in sunlight from the single window. Reading steadied her mind. The news from Europe, brought by newspapers and rumors, was too heavy to carry all the time. Trials in Nuremberg, the division of occupied zones, the photographs of camps that none of them had believed existed. The stories of horror from their own side reached even here, thousands of miles away. At first the women dismissed them as lies, enemy exaggerations. But the American papers printed pictures, bodies, barbed wire, hollow faces, and the guards did not laugh or boast when they showed them. They looked grim, ashamed, and silent. Hilda stared at one of the papers for a long time. That we didn't know, she whispered. No, Anna said. We didn't want to. After that, the camp felt quieter. The women spoke less about home and more about what they might have been part of without realizing it. The thought lay heavy between them. Work continued. Anna's English improved enough that Captain Harris began asking her to translate letters sent by German prisoners in nearby men's camps. She sat at a desk in the infirmary, deciphering careful script, turning it into simple English sentences. The captain always read her translations without judgment. You do this well, he said once. You have a steady hand. Thank you, sir. He studied her for a moment, as though trying to decide something. It's strange, he said finally, how this war scattered people everywhere. You could have been my secretary back home. Anna smiled faintly. Maybe in another life. He nodded. Yes. Maybe. The words lingered between them, simple, almost absurd, yet comforting. For the first time, she realized the Americans were not immune to loneliness either. Many of the guards were young, far from home, counting days until discharge. On Sundays, the camp chaplain held voluntary services. Some of the women attended, not out of faith but for the quiet. The hymns were unfamiliar, yet the melody carried a kind of peace. Anna did not sing, but she listened, her eyes closed. The words, mercy, forgiveness, grace, seemed to hover like fragile promises. Afterward, the chaplain, a gray-haired man named Reverend Thompson, sometimes spoke to them in slow, careful German. War makes everyone forget they are human, he said once. But remembering begins here. Anna wrote that sentence in her notebook later. Remembering begins here. In November, snow came early. The camp looked almost beautiful under a thin white layer, the fences glinting like lines drawn in frost. The guards wore thick coats, the prisoners walked briskly to keep warm. The canteen served thin stew with extra potatoes on Thanksgiving, and though none of the women understood the holiday, they appreciated the warmth of the gesture. That evening, an American soldier brought a phonograph to the recreation hall. "Music night," he announced. "Everyone's invited." The women gathered, curious. The record hissed, and a slow jazz tune filled the room. Some of the guards tapped their feet, one even whistled along. It was the first music Anna had heard that was not a march or anthem. The rhythm felt loose, almost careless, and something inside her eased. When the record ended, there was applause, hesitant at first, then genuine. The soldier laughed. "Tomorrow I'll bring Glenn Miller," he said. "You'll like that one." For a few minutes, they were simply people listening to music, not captors and captives. Later, walking back to the barracks, Hilda said, "It's strange. I almost forgot we were prisoners." Anna nodded. "Maybe they forget too." By December, word spread that some prisoners would soon be repatriated. Men first, then women. The thought of going home filled the barracks with nervous excitement. What was home now? Ruins, perhaps. Families scattered. Streets renamed. Yet the idea of leaving felt both thrilling and frightening. Anna realized she had grown accustomed to order: 3 meals, a bed, a predictable world bounded by fences. Freedom, after such containment, felt abstract. One cold night, unable to sleep, she walked quietly to the end of the barracks and looked out through the narrow window. The guard tower light swept the perimeter, then turned away. Beyond it, she could see faint stars above the pines. She thought of her mother, of the ruins of Bremen, of Captain Harris and his even voice, of the jazz record spinning in the recreation hall. All of it seemed connected somehow, a web of opposites: captivity and kindness, guilt and forgiveness, loss and survival. She opened her notebook and wrote. Perhaps humanity is not something given by nations but by moments. A piece of bread. A warm bed. A song in a strange language. That is what survives wars. She closed the book, tucked it under her pillow, and slept more deeply than she had in months. The new year arrived quietly. There were no celebrations, no fireworks, only the distant echo of laughter from the American side of the camp, and the smell of wood smoke drifting from the guardhouse. For the women, January 1946 began like all other months: the roll call at dawn, the sound of boots on frozen ground, the same meals served in tin trays. Yet something in the air had shifted. They were still prisoners, but now they knew the war was truly over. Germany was divided, cities were being rebuilt or erased, the trials in Nuremberg filled the newspapers. Every few weeks, new prisoners arrived, men from other camps, sick or wounded, their stories filled with confusion. Anna and the others listened carefully, gathering fragments. The Reich was gone. The swastika banners burned. Even the word fatherland had begun to sound strange in their ears, like a phrase from an old story they no longer believed. One morning, a rumor passed through the barracks: 2 of the women were to be released. They were from Bavaria, and their families had petitioned the Red Cross. When they left the camp, carrying small suitcases and wearing American-issued coats, everyone gathered by the fence to watch. "Do you think we'll be next?" Hilda whispered. "Maybe," Anna said. "But I don't know if I'm ready." The truth was that the thought of freedom frightened her. The camp, for all its fences, had become a world of certainty. Outside was the unknown, a Germany she could barely imagine. That night, she dreamed she was walking through Bremen. The buildings were only shadows, the air thick with dust. Her mother called her name, but the voice came from nowhere. When she turned, she saw not her mother but Captain Harris, standing amid rubble, holding her notebook. "Remembering begins here," he said. Before the dream dissolved, she woke before dawn, heart pounding. The infirmary remained, the thin light of morning creeping through the cracks in the wall. In late January, a group of American doctors visited to inspect conditions. They walked through the wards, nodding approval, making notes. One of them, a tall woman in a Red Cross armband, spoke kindly to Anna. "You look well cared for here," she said in accented English. That's good. When you go home, you must help rebuild. Germany will need women who can organize, who can work. Anna wanted to ask what home meant now, but the words stuck in her throat. She simply nodded. After the inspection, Captain Harris told her quietly, they'll likely close this camp by summer. Most of you will go back soon. She looked down at her hands. And you, sir? I'll be discharged in March, he said. Back to Ohio. My wife's been waiting 3 years. Oh. She wasn't sure why she felt disappointed. You must be glad. I am, he said softly, then added, but I'll remember this place. People think war ends when guns stop firing. It doesn't. It ends when people start talking again. She smiled faintly. You sound like Reverend Thompson. He laughed. Maybe he's right. In February, the snow melted. The fields outside the camp turned brown and soft, and with the thaw came restlessness. The women began asking more questions: when, how, where they would be sent. Some grew impatient, others grew fearful. Hilda, always practical, said one evening, if they send us to the Russian zone, we'll never get home. My cousin was taken east last year, no one's heard since. Anna frowned. Perhaps we can request the British zone. Bremen is there. Do you think they'll listen? I don't know, Anna said, though she secretly believed the Americans might. She had come to trust their fairness, even if she didn't understand it. That spring, a group of American students from a nearby university visited the camp to conduct interviews for a research project about rehabilitation. They were polite, earnest young people, carrying notebooks. One of them, a dark-haired woman named Margaret, sat across from Anna in the recreation hall. Can you describe, Margaret asked carefully, what you expected when you were captured? Anna hesitated. We expected cruelty, she said finally. We were told the Americans would treat us like animals. But they didn't. That was the first shock. What do you think now, after almost a year here? Anna thought of the showers, the food, the music nights, the kindness that had felt almost unbearable at first. I think, she said slowly, that dignity is a kind of weapon too. It disarms you. It makes you see yourself again. Margaret wrote that down, her pen scratching quickly. That's very interesting, she said. When the interview ended, she thanked Anna and shook her hand. The gesture, simple, unguarded, left Anna oddly moved later. In the barracks, she wrote in her notebook. Perhaps this is what peace means, when strangers touch your hand without fear. March came with soft rains and the smell of earth. The guards grew more relaxed, their patrols looser. Sometimes, they even shared cigarettes with the prisoners through the fence. One afternoon, a soldier offered Anna an apple. She took it, surprised by the gesture, and said, "Thank you." He grinned. "You're welcome, miss." The word miss still startled her. It was the same word the sergeant had used the day she arrived. Once it had sounded foreign, ironic. Now it sounded almost real. By April, more women were transferred out. Each departure left a strange silence. The barracks that had once been crowded grew half empty. Anna helped pack their things, letters, small handmade trinkets, bits of embroidery. When Hilda's name appeared on the next list, she hugged Anna tightly. "You'll be next," she said. "Promise you'll write if we find each other again." Anna nodded, blinking back tears. "I promise." After the truck carried Hilda away, Anna sat alone on her bunk, feeling the emptiness of the room around her. She truly felt like a prisoner again, not because of fences, but because of goodbyes. She turned to her notebook, now almost full. The pages smelled faintly of soap and ink. She wrote one last entry for that day. Each departure feels like the war ending again, piece by piece. But perhaps that is how peace comes, not all at once, but in slow departures and small mercies. She closed the book and looked out the window. The sky beyond the wire was streaked with light, the color of early spring. By May 1946 the camp was half empty. Barracks that had once echoed with voices now stood quiet except for the creak of bunks and the low hum of insects outside the screens. Rows of laundry no longer fluttered between the huts, there were fewer uniforms to wash, fewer conversations in the yard. Each departure made the fences seem higher. Anna kept her routines because they were the only structure left. She rose before the bugle, folded her blanket into precise squares, swept the barracks floor even when it did not need sweeping. At the infirmary she continued her clerical work, writing English and German side by side on yellow forms. The Americans seemed in no hurry to send her home, though Captain Harris had already been discharged. His replacement, Lieutenant Miller, was younger, brisk, and distant. He treated the prisoners courteously but without the quiet curiosity that Harris had shown. When he introduced himself, he said simply, "My job is to wind this place down." That phrase, "wind down," made Anna think of a clock slowly losing its rhythm. The absence of Harris left an emptiness she could not quite name. She missed his calm voice, the way he sometimes paused before speaking as if weighing words on an invisible scale. She found herself rehearsing English phrases to use when the mail came, though there was no one to say them to. Once a week she still received letters from Germany. Her mother's handwriting grew shakier, but the tone remained steady. "The city is rebuilding. There is talk of a new currency. We have potatoes from a neighbor's field. Your brother dreams of emigrating to Canada. Come home soon, my girl, the house feels too quiet." Each word felt like a door she could not yet walk through. Anna wrote back. "I will come as soon as they release me. We are told perhaps summer. I work in the hospital now. I am learning that kindness can exist even after everything is broken." June arrived with heavy heat. The air smelled of pine sap and dust. The women who remained moved slower, their dresses sticking to their backs. The camp guards set out barrels of water so they could soak rags for their next point. One afternoon Lieutenant Miller called a meeting in the yard. "Ladies," he said, "this camp will close by September. You will be processed in groups and sent east to embarkation centers. Some of you will go through New York, others through New Orleans. The Red Cross will notify your families." A murmur rippled through the ranks. For the first time, the word home no longer sounded like a rumor. Yet the certainty of departure brought unease. That evening Anna and several others gathered outside the barracks, sitting on the grass. The air shimmered with mosquitoes and the distant hum of a generator. "What do you think it will be like?" someone asked. "Different," said another. "I heard they use cigarettes instead of money now." Hilda was gone, so Anna answered quietly, "Whatever it's like, it won't be what we remember." The others nodded, each lost in thought. In July the first thunderstorm of the season broke over the camp. The rain came in sudden sheets, drumming against the roofs. The women ran from the yard, laughing, hair plastered to their faces. For a moment, it felt like childhood, like running through summer rain on cobblestone streets, before uniforms and orders. Afterward the air smelled of wet wood and earth. Anna stood at the window watching water drip from the fence wire. She opened her notebook and wrote. "Rain makes the fences disappear for a moment. Everything becomes the same color." She wondered what Captain Harris would have thought of that line. By late July, Red Cross officials returned with more forms. They photographed each woman, measured weight and height, and issued small identification cards stamped POW, female, returned to Germany. The process was efficient, impersonal. Yet when Anna held the card in her hand, she felt its weight as something final. That night she could not sleep. The barrack smelled faintly of soap and cedar, the fan clicked rhythmically overhead. She thought of Bremen, of the ruins, of her mother waiting near the river. She also thought of the camp, the orderly rows, the canteen coffee, the library where sunlight fell through dust motes. Against her will, she felt a kind of affection for it. It was the first place in years where no one had shouted slogans, where she had simply existed. She turned the card over. On the back, in blue ink, someone had stamped the date of issue, July 27, 1946. She stared at the numbers until they blurred. August brought departures again. Each week another truck left for the coast. The remaining women spent hours trading addresses on scraps of paper, promising to write though none knew if the letters would ever find their way across a divided Europe. One afternoon, while helping in the infirmary, Anna heard footsteps behind her. When she turned, Lieutenant Miller stood in the doorway holding a sealed envelope. "For you," he said. She wiped her hands and took it. Inside was a short note on official stationery. To Miss Anna Keller. You are hereby scheduled for repatriation transport number 46A, departing August 19, 1946. Prepare belongings and report for inspection 2 days prior. She folded the letter carefully. Thank you, sir. Miller nodded. You've been one of the good ones, he said, almost embarrassed. Good luck out there. When he left, she sat for a long time staring at the empty doorway. The words "good luck out there" echoed strangely. Out where? In the world that had destroyed itself. The final week passed in slow motion. The women packed their few possessions, letters, notebooks, bits of fabric, photographs cut from magazines. They cleaned the barracks until the floors shone. On the last evening, the chaplain held one more service in the recreation hall. He read from the Psalms, then spoke quietly. Peace is not an end, he said. It's a beginning that feels like loss. When the service ended, he walked among them, shaking hands. When he reached Anna, he said, You kept good records, Miss Keller. Don't forget that order is a form of hope. She smiled faintly. I'll try to remember. That night she made her final entry in the notebook. Tomorrow we leave. I am afraid to go and ashamed to stay. I have learned that forgiveness is heavier than guilt because you must carry it forward. The Americans gave us back small things, soap, bread, sleep, and somehow those became symbols of a world that can start again. She closed the book, tied it with string, and placed it in the bottom of her bag. At dawn the truck engines rumbled to life. The remaining guards lined up, saluting briefly. The women climbed aboard, clutching their suitcases. As the gates opened, Anna looked back once. The camp stood silent in the morning light, fences gleaming, flag barely stirring. She thought of the first day she had arrived, frightened and hungry, and of how impossible it would have seemed then that she might leave intact, even hopeful. The truck rolled forward. The gate clanged shut behind them. Ahead lay the long road to the coast and the unknown shape of home. The ship that carried them back to Europe moved slowly across the Atlantic, cutting through gray water under a pale sky. The women stood at the rail, wind pulling at their hair, each lost in private thoughts. Behind them lay a year of captivity that had not felt like punishment, ahead waited a home they no longer recognized. When the harbor lights of Bremerhaven finally appeared, Anna felt her throat tighten. Smoke curled above the ruins, cranes moved among broken docks, and somewhere in the distance a church bell rang with a hollow echo. Germany had survived, but it was a different country, humbled, divided, searching for its reflection. The Red Cross officers processed them quickly, stamping papers, handing out ration cards. Anna walked through the gates alone, carrying her small suitcase and her notebook. The air smelled of coal dust and sea salt. At the station she saw her mother waiting, older, thinner, but unmistakably her. For a moment neither moved. Then they embraced, and the sound of her mother's voice, soft, trembling, broke the silence between past and present. You're home, her mother whispered. Anna closed her eyes. Yes, she said, though the word felt fragile. That evening, in the dim kitchen of their repaired house, she unpacked her things. From the bottom of the suitcase she drew out the notebook. Its pages had yellowed slightly, the pencil fading. She turned to the last blank space and wrote. August 29, 1946. I am home. The war has followed me here, but so has mercy. I once thought kindness was weakness. Now I know it is the only strength that rebuilds anything. She set down the pencil, listening to the quiet. Outside, the evening wind carried the smell of rain, clean, familiar, forgiving.